What if I told you that Hamilton's return to Ferrari in Canada was not simply another day of training, but the biggest alert signal about what is really wrong within the Italian team? What I am going to show you today will not see it anywhere else. On Friday, June 13, 2025, it was not one more day in the Formula One. While many fans focused on the chronometers and the positions of the table, which happened with Lewis Hamilton during the day of free practices in the Canada GP was a clear, but silent sample, that something much deeper is fracturing the bases of the Ferrari project. Hamilton arrived at the Gilles-Villeneuve circuit knowing that this weekend had a different emotional and technical weight. Not only was it a track that has historically favored him, but the return to a layout where years ago he had starred in some of his most iconic performances. But this time I was not behind the wheel of a dominant Mercedes. I was immersed in the technical labyrinth of the SF25, a car that has proven to be extremely complex to understand and even more difficult to optimize. In the first training session, the FP1, Hamilton seemed to start with the right foot. It marked a time of 1:13,620, enough to be located in the 5th position, just 427 thousandths of liter Max Verstappen. That difference, in terms of modern Formula One, is competitive. He suggested that Ferrari, or at least Hamilton, had managed to find an initial setup that allowed them to be close to the top. But that feeling lasted little, because in the FP2, everything collapsed. Although the car had supposedly been improved with adjustments between sessions, Hamilton's time not only did not improve in the competitive context, but lost relative performance. It fell to the 8th place with a time of 1:12,653, remaining more than half a second of the leader of the second session, George Russell. This decrease was not due to adverse external conditions or pilot errors. It was a direct consequence of the changes applied by Ferrari in the car configuration, a situation that not only baffled engineers, but also deeply frustrated Hamilton. According to Hamilton himself, the perception within the car was the contrary to the results obtained. He said textually, "I thought the car was faster, but we ended up going slower." This, in any other context, could be interpreted as a bad momentary reading. But not in Ferrari. Not in 2025. Because this phrase has become a pattern in each Grand Prix since the season began. This pattern not only reflects a disconnection between theory and practice, but a critical gap in the understanding of the SF25. What is configured in the simulator does not translate into track. What is seen in the data the pilot does not feel. And when that pilot is a 7-time world champion, one who has worked with some of the best engineers in the world, the problem is not in the interpretation but in the surrounding system. Friday's day was a perfect representation of Ferrari's structural problem. The team has resources, it has talent, it has experience. But it does not have a solid correlation base between what it plans and what it obtains. The fact that Hamilton began with good rhythm and then backed away after positive changes shows that Ferrari is working blindly, making technical bets without really knowing how the car will respond in real conditions. And in Montreal, a circuit that combines long straight with intense braking and slow curves where the balance is critical, those shortcomings multiply. The car should not only be fast, it must be stable when braking, agile in the direction and capable of maintaining traction out of slow curves. Ferrari failed to meet any of those requirements after the adjustments between FP1 and FP2, and the result was a session that, beyond the numbers, presented the fragility of its technical program. This is where things get serious. While many means concentrate only on the results or loose phrases of the pilots, the true history of the SF25 is being written in a silence that Ferrari has imposed on its own men. And Lewis Hamilton has been, unintentionally, the channel for which this story begins to leak. It all started weeks ago in the Spain Grand Prix, when Hamilton, for the first time since signed for Ferrari, suggested something that the team did not want it to come to light. He said that both he and his partner Charles Leclerc suffered significant technical problems, that they were massively harming them from the middle of the race. The most shocking thing was not the revelation itself, but what came later. Unfortunately, the team does not really want us to talk about it. That moment was the turning point. The public confirmation that Ferrari is hiding critical information on the performance and reliability of its car. And what happened in Canada did nothing but deepen this suspicion. Because while the world saw Hamilton falling in the table after a configuration change, he was detecting something that his engineers still did not understand at all. A structural failure in the design of the SF25 that cannot be solved simply by adjusting wingers or changing the rake of the car. According to internal sources, during the Montreal FP2, Hamilton reported anomalous behavior in areas of low adhesion of the circuit. This is key because Gilles-Villeneuve is not a traditional circuit of pure aerodynamics. It is a hybrid path where high pianos, aggressive braking and short accelerations subdue the car to constant stress, both vertical and lateral. It is the type of track that makes any weakness in the flat bottom and in the interaction of the airflow with the lower part of the car. The specific problem that Hamilton detected seems to be related to the soil management of the SF25 soil. In theory, the car was designed with a new refrigeration and distribution architecture of flow that should maximize performance on mixed tracks. But what is happening is the opposite. When the car passes through areas with sudden variations of temperature, such as curve outlets where the grip changes immediately, the pressure under the ground is unbalanced, generating loss of aerodynamic load in the rear axle. In other words, the car is destabilized just when you need traction. This type of failure is not less. It is a symptom of a poorly executed concept, not a badly calibrated piece. And that is the most worrying thing for Hamilton. Because it means that it does not matter how much the team adjusts the rear wing or how much the suspensions modify. If the car's floor does not respond correctly to the thermal environment and the dynamic flow, the SF25 will always be an unpredictable machine. And here one of the reasons why Ferrari wants to keep this under silence comes into play. Recognizing this type of error in the middle of the season is equivalent to admitting that the 2025 project was born with a factory failure. A failure that cannot be solved with aerodynamic updates or minor evolutions. It requires a deep redesign of the soil and the body, something unfeasible with the budget limit and the calendar of tight competitions that in addition, accepting this fault not only stains Ferrari's technical prestige, but also calls into question the internal decisions of the technical direction led by Enrico Cardile. That is why Hamilton and Leclerc have been asked to avoid talking about the issue with the press. But the problem is too big to hide for a long time. In Montreal, the SF25 showed once again that its operational window is incredibly narrow. It works within millimeter margins, forcing engineers to play Russian roulette every weekend. A small mismatch is enough in the track temperature or in the moisture of the air so that the behavior of the car changes completely. And in a sport where every thousandth, that instability is a competitive death sentence. Therefore, when Hamilton speaks of frustration, he is not pointing only to the times per return. He is talking about a deeper frustration, that of a pilot who knows what he needs to win, but is caught in an environment where solutions do not exist or are not allowed to discuss. And the most alarming of all is that if this continues, Ferrari runs the risk of repeating one of its greatest historical errors, allowing internal pride to weigh more than technical truth. The truth is that Hamilton already knows, the one that many still refuse to accept. At this point, the question is no longer only what is happening to Ferrari, but how much more time Lewis Hamilton can sustain a project that seems to stagger from within. The first day of the Canada 2025 Grand Prix has revealed a deep structural failure, not only in the car, but in the way in which the Italian team manages its own internal conflict between aspiration and execution. And those technical cracks are beginning to have strategic consequences that could change everything for Hamilton. The relationship between a top pilot and his team is not built solely on results. It is based on mutual trust that both are moving towards the same goal. But since the 2025 season began, Hamilton has given signs that this trust is being eroded by a mixture of technical frustration and strategic isolation. In Australia, for example, his words were cautious but clear: "We are far from where we need to be." Then, in China, he hit the table with a brilliant performance in sprint classification, but even in that flash of greatness it was evidence that the merit was more of his than the car. The situation in Canada exposes the fragility of this balance. Ferrari has demonstrated not clarity in the correlation between simulator, wind tunnel, and royal track. And if that does not change soon, Hamilton's season could become a repetition of his last years in Mercedes. A lot of personal effort, little technical support. But there is a crucial difference. In Mercedes, at least, Hamilton had voice and power within the structure. In Ferrari, for now, he is a newcomer to an environment that is governed more by tradition than by adaptation. And here the most delicate factor enters: the strategy. Every time Ferrari tries to respond to his technical problems with a configuration decision, he risks losing even more performance. We saw it in Montreal, where the team chose to change aerodynamic parameters after the FP1, trusting an alleged improvement, just to discover that they had retreated. This is a sign of technical disorientation. But it is also a failure in strategic decision-making. Modern F1 requires surgical precision in each weekend session. There is no room to improvise between practices. Each interpretation error in the free compromises not only the classification, but the entire career strategy. And when that decision-making systematically fails, the pilot begins to lose something worse than time. It begins to lose faith. Lewis Hamilton is a pilot who, at 40, has not come to Ferrari for nostalgia or marketing. His arrival is a calculated movement with a single purpose: to fight again for a title. And what is seeing in these first 9 great prizes is that, despite the talent of the engineers, the competitive spirit of the team, and the individual flashes of Leclerc or of itself, the current structure of Ferrari is not prepared to support a championship campaign. This opens a series of deep questions. How much more time can Hamilton maintain your trust in the project? What will happen if, after the summer break, the problems persist? Will you settle for being a transitional mentor or require radical changes? And, perhaps the most important thing, what will Ferrari do if Hamilton begins to exert public pressure to transform the team from the inside? Because if Lewis has demonstrated throughout his career, it is that when he finds the perfect connection between pilot, car, and equipment, it is unstoppable. But he has also shown that he will not stay in a place where his skills cannot flourish at the highest level. And if Ferrari does not listen in time, he could lose more than a season. He could miss his last great opportunity to return to the throne. And now the question is open for you. Do you think Hamilton and Ferrari will find that harmony before the cracks become irreparable fractures? Are we seeing the beginning of a transformation or the prelude to an inevitable separation? Leave me your opinion in the comments.